Alright guys, so we are inside the beautiful world of Blender 3D, and here we're going to be creating that amazing watch which you saw in the intro. So yeah, without any further ado, let's start. So first of all, we need references. Now where do we find references? Well, google.com. So I just went to google.com and I found two references. These are the same pictures. These are different pictures of the same watch. So one is this is the front view, and this is the side view. Although we're not going to be placing it like this, we are going to be just letting these straps just go out in the air, and I'm going to explain it later on. So yeah, that is going to be it. So to import these references in Blender, what we have to do is that we first need to, let me just delete the default cube and the light and the camera as well. Just save your project, by the way. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be dragging each of these in Blender, and I'm just going to close this and this one as well. Just drag it a little away. So what I'm going to do is that with the selected, I'm going to be pressing Alt G and Alt R. The reason why I did that was to reset the rotation and the position. Okay, so it's gonna basically go back to this default position. Now I'm going to press R to rotate, and I'm going to press X to rotate it in the X-axis. Now you can obviously just eyeball it like this. You can see on the top left hand corner, you're going to see that it's showing you the degrees. If you hold control, it's going to rotate in increments of 5, and that way you can rotate 90 degrees. However, how I prefer is just press R, X and 90. It's going to rotate it 90 degrees in the X-axis automatically, and just press enter. And now I'm going to do the same with the Z-axis, R, Z and 90, and that's how we want our reference to be. Actually, never mind, I'm just going to, yeah, that's how we want it to be. Perfect. So apart from that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be taking this, I'm going to press Alt G and Alt R to reset the position and rotation of this as well. And before we continue, I'm just going to reduce the opacity of these pictures references. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to select these, and I'm going to go to this image settings, object data properties, and here we can check the opacity, and we can just reduce it. I'm going to reduce it to something like 0.2. Yeah, perfect. 0.2 should be nice. And I'm going to do the same with this as well. Just select it and opacity 0.2. Perfect. So now if I go to my front view, you're going to see that we can see it, but it's not completely taking over our image, our viewport. Okay, so next up what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be aligning both of these references. Now you're going to see that this side view is much larger than this front view, and we want them to be basically the same exact scale. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to add a mesh, which is going to be a cylinder, and we are also going to be using the cylinder to model our watch. So for that, what I'm going to do is that first of all, I'm going to be rotating it in the y-axis 90 degrees, R, Y, 90, and that's just going to, oops, my bad, R, Y, 90, press enter, and that's just going to rotate it 90 degrees in the y-axis. And then I'm going to be reducing the size, something like that, so that it covers. I'm also going to press Alt Z to toggle this X-ray mode. You can also press this button right here, but I would obviously prefer using shortcuts because it's much faster. And just make sure that it's roughly the same size, something like that. Just go to the top view, and I'm going to be yeah, so what we're going to be doing is that we are going to be making sure that this is aligned with that as well, right? So I'm going to be first of all rotating it in the z-axis 180 degrees so that it's basically flipped, and I'm going to be reducing the size, and I'm going to see that we have to make sure, I just pressed Alt Z by the way, you just have to make sure that this is aligned with that, right? So I'm going to rotate it slightly just like that and place it somewhere here, and obviously increase the size. Something like that should be pretty good. Just a tad bit higher. Exactly like that. Perfect. Just make sure that it's flushed in, and just rotate it slightly more. That should be good. Perfect. So now we have our references ready. You're going to see that this is perfectly aligned with that, and it's also perfectly aligned with the front view as well. So I hope that wasn't confusing. So yeah, let's move on to the next step, which is actually starting to model this watch. So what I'm going to do for that is that I'm going to be selecting this cylinder, and first of all I'm going to be applying a modifier, which is going to be a subdivision surface modifier. Now you can just go to modifier menu, and you can just add a modifier like that, and you're going to see that it's going to mess up this whole thing immediately, and we're going to be fixing that in just a minute. By the way, just save your project. So to actually fix this, what we're going to be doing is that first of all, let me just hide this subdivision surface modifier by pressing this button right here, and I'm going to go to edit mode, or press Alt Z, and just make sure what we have to do is clear. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be extruding this. We're going to be insetting this a little bit, and then we're going to be moving it out. Then we're going to be insetting it again, and then we're going to be pushing it in for that interface. So if you didn't get that, no worries at all. You're going to be absolutely clear on that in just a minute. But before we start, I'm going to be just with this X-ray mode turned on, and in edit mode, I'm just going to select these vertices right here. I'm going to press G and X to move them in the X-axis, and make sure that the size is actually aligned with that. Okay, so that is perfect. So next up, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to go to face select mode, and I'm going to turn off the X-ray mode. I'm just going to select the top face. Actually, let's turn it on, and I'm going to be pressing I to inset it, and just make sure that you inset it just till this thing right here. Just give me a second, let me show you from a different angle. Just till this thing right here, you know what I mean, this thing right here. Okay, so once we're done with that, you're gonna see that we have this. Now I'm gonna insert it once again, so it's something like that, and this time we're gonna be scaling it in. So first of all, let me just go to edge select mode, and let me just select let me just alt click this edge right here, this edge, and just gonna select the whole edge loop. Alternatively, you can obviously just select this and press shift and just select all these edges, but pressing alt and just selecting it is much faster. So I'm just going to be pressing G and X, moving it out forward a little bit, just a tad bit like that, and I'm going to press A to select everything, and I'm going to be pressing G and Z to move it back, so that it's actually aligned with our the side view as well. So something like that should probably be good. And let me just press Alt Z, and I'm going to see that it's starting to look like an actual watch, which we want. Yeah, so I'm just going to press Alt Z again so we can see our reference properly. I think the size needs to be a little smaller, but it doesn't really matter that much. So yeah, I'm just going to roll with that. Or are we? Let me just reduce the size a little bit. Press A and just reduce the size a tad bit, something like that. Now you're going to see it's much better. It's aligning much better. So that is that, and that is perfect. So now I'm just gonna turn this subdivision surface modifier on again, and you're gonna see that it's gonna look very weird. So I'm gonna press tab, press shift Z, alt Z, and with this face selected, with this interface selected, not that one, this one, the forward interface selected, I'm gonna be pressing I again to get rid of those issues, just a tad bit, and again like that. Perfect. So that's just gonna get rid of those weird issues which we had over here, and now let's start sharpening our edges. But before that, I'm just gonna increase the levels viewport to 2. I think 2 should be fine. Yeah, 2 should be, actually no, let's do 3. So just make sure that your levels viewport and your render is the same. And yeah, we're not going to be shading it smooth right now, we're going to be doing that later on. But yeah, now let's just start adding loop cuts, and let's make this look much better. So I'm just going to select, instead of adding a new loop cut, I'm just going to select this edge right here, this edge loop, and I'm just going to be pressing G twice to move this edge, and I'm going to be moving it something like that. Actually, never mind, I'm just going to add a loop cut because moving this edge is not that effective. Or we can try moving this edge. Yeah, I think that's going to be better. So it's going to just sharpen our edge right there, just like that. And let's add a loop cut right there as well to make sure that this is sharp as well, and one right there as well. Make sure that this is sharp as well, because since this is a watch, it needs to be pretty sharp from the edges. And yeah, let me just add one right there as well, and one right there as well. And let's just add one at the back as well to make sure that it's fine from the back as well. And I'm gonna be you're gonna see these weird shading issues right now. You can see these baby curly lines, and to fix that, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna be selecting the back face, and I'm gonna be insetting it again. Perfect. So now you're gonna see those issues are gone, and it's just smooth shading throughout the image. Okay, perfect. So let me just make sure that we're not missing anything. Yeah, I think it's perfect. Yeah, okay, so next up what we're going to be doing is our watch face is basically done. Now let's start working on these handles. So before that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be, first of all, I'm going to be deleting half of this. And the reason for that is because I don't want to do this all over again. Like I don't want to do this twice for both these sides. And we just have to do it. We just need to do it once. Okay. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be, first of all, we can just go to point select mode, press Alt C, and let's select half of this. Now you're going to see the problem with this is that if I delete this, you're going to see that it's going to delete a lot of the stuff, and it's only leaving this weird part out, which is not what we want. We just want it to be exactly half. Okay, so for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be pressing K. First deselect everything. By the way, just save your project. I'm going to be pressing K, and I'm going to be just pressing right here, and actually not there. I'm just going to be selecting the one of these edges, and I'm going to be pressing X, not X, Y, to lock it to the Y-axis, and just press anywhere outside this watch, and just press K. Just left click, and now if you press C, it's going to cut through as well, and that's what we want. Cut through is on, and now I'm going to press Enter, and you're going to see that it's going to create this line from throughout this what do you call it? Throughout this watch. But the problem is it didn't cut the back, because that's because we didn't have our what do you call it? Our extra mode turned on. So I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to do that again with my extra mode turned on. So I'm just gonna what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna be pressing K and just press anywhere right there, any of those edges, and just press Y to lock it to Y-axis, and left click there and press by the way, just make sure that you press C so cut through is turned on, and press Enter, so it's going to cut through this whole watch. And I'm going to see it has I don't think it has cut. Yeah, I think it's cut. Perfect. So let's just turn off the extra mode again. I think this is getting a little confusing because this part is basically the hardest part of this whole tutorial. Everything after this is very easy, so just bear with me for a second. Let me just turn these references off for a minute. Just select this and press H, and press H as well to hide them. And I'm just going to select this. Let's go to the back, and let's select this edge vertices and select this vertice as well, and press F to basically fill those vertices, right? So that's just going to create a what do you call it, a line for us to cut through. And now if you just select half of these and press delete, you're going to see that it's only going to cut half of them, and that is exactly what we want. Alright, so now with half of this cut out, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be adding a modifier, which is going to be a mirror modifier, and I'm going to see immediately when I add it, it's just going to like add it in the x-axis, and just turn on, make sure that this clipping is turned on, because it's going to fix some issues which we're going to have later on. And apart from that, I think it looks pretty good, doesn't it? Yeah, you're going to see that it looks pretty good. And now we're going to be starting our work on the handles and everything. Well, not the handles, these straps and everything. Okay, so I'm just going to be pressing Alt H to unhide those references. And just by the way, just save the project. Just make sure to go to the front view, select this, and go to edit mode. Let's just go down because we only have the geometry down. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be selecting this face right here. Just go to face select mode. I'm going to be selecting this face right here, and we're going to be extruding it. This face selected, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to press E to extrude, and you're going to see that it's extruding something like that. And once it's extruded something like that, I'm just going to be pressing G and moving it somewhere here. That is something like what we want. And I'm going to press R to rotate it as well. And it's going to, let's make sure that it's smaller as well. Let's extrude it again. And one last time. But this time I'm going to be pressing Alt Z to go to X-ray mode, and I'm going to be pressing going into my vertice select mode, and I'm going to be making sure that it's these edges are aligned with the reference, and we're not doing anything outside of what the reference wants us to. Okay, so I'm just going to be adding a loop cut right there to make sure that this edge becomes sharper, although that part could have been done later on. I just did it now. Okay, so one other thing which I'm also going to be doing is that I'm going to be adding a loop cut right here as well. to make sure that this is sharper as well. And I think it should have been a little more sharper, but we're going to be adding a loop cut later on in this, so just don't worry about that right now. And so now I'm going to do the same exact thing with the other side as well. I'm just going to select this face right here, go to face select mode, select this face right here, and extrude it. Just the same exact thing. And rotate it. Something like that. Just like that. And like that. So now obviously this looks terrible. So I'm going to be scaling it down and just making sure that it's matching the reference just the way we want it to. Go to edge select mode and just do this and this. Perfect. So I'm going to be adding a loop cut there as well. Just basically mirror what you did on that side and you should be good to go. Perfect. So now if I get out of my edit mode, edit mode and my extreme mode, you're going to see that both of them look pretty similar. Now I'm just going to go to my side view, actually not the side view. One thing which we can do is, instead of having this as the top view, let's actually have it as a side view, right? So I'm just going to press R, X and 90. We'll just make sure that it's like that. And now we can just mess with this right here. So I'm just going to go down and let's make sure that these are a little tilted because they are in the reference photos. And how about let's not use the reference because it's making things very confusing. I'm just going to hide the reference and we're just going to be doing it on our own. I think that should be much better. So let's select this and let's first add a loop cut right here. Oops, add a loop cut right there. Just make sure that it's very tight. Actually, let's add another one to make sure that it's extra tight. Perfect. Let's do the same exact thing here as well. The reason why I'm doing these steps one after the other is because so that I don't forget which step I did before, which step I did after, and that's not something good to do. Anyways, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to select oops, my bad. I'm going to select all these with extreme mode turned on, so that we're selecting the back as well. And I'm just going to be pressing G, and I'm going to be moving it a little back. Actually, that's something which we could do with all of these selected as well. Let's select this, and let's move them. Let's turn off the extra mode. Let's move them a little back, and I'm also going to be rotating it a little bit. Something a little like that should be good. Oops, my bad. Let me just, okay, so that is looking pretty good, I think. And one thing which we can do is that right now it's way too rounded, so I'm going to be adding a loop cut right there, and one right there as well. Now you're going to see it's razor sharp, and actually it is starting to look like an actual watch. So alright, so we are done with the watch face basically, and let's actually add a cylinder, add a mesh cylinder, and I'm just going to reduce the scale, and I'm going to be moving it up in the Z axis, and let's rotate it in the in the X axis 90 degrees, and this is going to be the bar which goes right there. And I'm going to go to my edit mode by pressing tab, and with all of this selected, I'm going to be scaling it down by pressing S, and I'm going to be let me just scale it down like that, something like that. Now let's go to my extreme mode, and I'm going to be selecting half of these, actually not half of these, all of these, pressing S and Y to scale it up in the Y axis, something like that. Oops, not H, press G, and just bring it something like that, and obviously reduce the scale a little bit and increase it in the Y axis. Bring it down. Now obviously this is just personal preference. Make sure that it's lined from the side as well. Now obviously this is just personal preference, and you can obviously disagree with this, and you can go with your own design if you want, and that's going to be perfectly fine. So one thing which I'm noticing is that the back is empty for some reason. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be pressing Alt and just selecting all these this whole edge loop and pressing F to fill it up, and that's just going to fix that issue real quick. So yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I think that is pretty good, and I'm just going to be selecting this, and I'm going to be adding a modifier to this, which is going to be a mirror modifier. Now this mirror object is basically the object upon which it mirrors. So I'm just going to set it to this watch face right here, and the reason for that is because we want this to appear there, down there as well, and that is perfect. So one thing which I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be moving it slightly up, so that we have some space between this and this, because we also need to add the bar, not the bar, the strap. And speaking of the strap, let's actually make that. So I'm just going to add a cube, something like that. Let's go to my side view, scale it down, something like that, and just bring it right here. Make sure that it's not intersecting, something like that. Scale it up in the y-axis with all of it selected, of course, in the edit mode. Just move it right there, something like that should be good. And with that, I'm just going to go to my X-ray mode first of all, just select these top vertices, and I think it's way too thick for now. I'm just going to bring it right there. I think that should be good. And I'm just going to select these top vertices, and I'm going to be extruding them out and rotating it, of course. But before that, let's move it, something like that. Let's rotate it slightly, extrude it out, and just extrude it out like that, and just bring it like that. Perfect. So that's going to be our strap, and obviously we are going to be smoothing it because right now it looks absolutely trash. Let's add a modifier, which is going to be a subdivision surface modifier, and you're going to see that it's going to look trash. By the way, before that, let me just select the cylinder, and let's right click and shade it smooth. But right now you're going to see the shading is very weird, and to fix that we're going to be going down to this object data properties right here, and we are going to be into the normals, and we're going to be pressing auto smooth. Now how this works is basically beyond the scope of this video, but in general what it does is that it fixes your it fixes your shading issues, and because it does not smooth the edges which are more than 30 degrees, right? So that's basically, this 30 degrees is basically the maximum angle between face normals that will be considered as smooth. Okay, so I just read the definition right there. Okay, so that just fixes your shading issues. So I'm just going to be selecting this, right click, oh sorry, not right click, tab for edit mode, and I'm going to be adding a loop cut right there to make sure that it looks good, and I'm going to be adding one right there as well, or like that, and one like that as well. So that is starting to look like an actual strap, however it still is not good. I'm just going to be increasing these levels of viewport, and let's actually view our reference. Let's see how it looks. Okay, so this part is a little thicker and that part is a little thinner. So for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be selecting these, and I'm going to be reducing the size. Actually no, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be first adding a loop cut right there, and then I'm going to be reducing the size so that we can see these, see the difference between those. Let's move these down. I press double G for that, by the way, and let's select all these and just scale them down as well. Well, not like that. Well, that was my bad. We need to scale them down in, let's first select them all. So we have to scale them down in the x-axis, and I'm going to be pressing S and X, so just scale them down like that. And of course, just make sure that the positioning is right. Perfect. So right now you're going to see that it is starting to look much better. However, it still does need a little bit of work. So I'm just going to be selecting these. Let's scale them up slightly, and let's move them forward. How about that? Does that cover it? But that is basically intersecting with that as well. So I'm going to be scaling it down in the y-axis. Oops, let me just select all of these. Get out of that mode. Scale them down in the y-axis. Something like that. That should be perfect. And let's see how it looks. So the loop cuts are a little too intense, I think. Let me just move them up, because we do need to make it a little you know, a little smooth as well, because this is going to be leather and not yeah, I think that is looking pretty good. Let me just look at my reference. Okay, so it's pretty thin. Okay, so it's just going to be the thickness of that rod, a little higher than that, and apart from that it's just going to be very, very thin. So I'm just going to do that. Let me just select all these, scale them down in the x-axis much more, a little bit higher. I think that should be good. Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to be doing that, and let me just bring this down there, and let me just scale this down in the x-axis a little bit as well. So I think that it should be looking much better, hopefully. I'm just going to be moving that a little up, and I'm going to be selecting this edge loop, and let's scale this down as well in the x-axis, of course. Oops, did it not select the whole loop? Okay, so I'm going to be selecting the bottom faces. Select this face, hold shift by the way. Just make sure that all the faces that are on the bottom are selected. Oops, not that. Just make sure that all these are selected. Oops, my bad. And just scale them down a little bit in the x-axis, of course. So now I'm going to see that it is actually starting to look more like a strap. Right click, shade smooth. Let's increase the levels to 3 as well, because why not? Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Yeah. And let me just see if we can make any improvements. Let me just select this edge. Just go to edge select mode, select this edge and these edges as well, and the sides. Now this part is obviously optional, and it's much I'd say it's very subjective. I'm just going to be smoothing this out. I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, that is that. And let me just increase let me just extend these Z, and just extend these so that they just get out of our camera frame. And okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to select this, and I'm going to be adding a modifier, which is going to be a mirror modifier, but not in that axis. First of all, let me just set the mirror object to this, and the x-axis seems to be fine. And that is our watch, ladies and gentlemen. The modeling part is complete, and yeah, now let's move on to the next part, which is going to be texturing. And after that, we're going to be working on the lighting and the camera setting and all that. Yeah, so that's basically it.